Spark.N.Stride. Spark.N.Stride.
Heavy duty.
It's much.
Oh, like,
Was it hot yoga? Or was it just regular?
I've always liked the hot yoga. I don't know.
Me
I just
too.
Kind of
For
attracted to it.
like,
yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's just like it kind of like I just feel like deepens practice at like being warm and cozy. Maybe I don't
Sure.
know.
Yeah. It's definitely got a good. It's good on your muscles, right? It's good on your joints and that kind of thing. So it's so cool that you're here and that we could kind of like talk about a number of things, but we're centered around yoga because I want to talk about how you got into your franchise. But I picked up yoga, or I don't know if yoga picked me up about. It's almost a year now.
Nice.
It's almost a year. So I go down the road here to Basque yoga, hot yoga. And
That's where I go when I'm in town too.
Oh, right?
Yeah. I love
They're great.
They're very similar to the studio that I have in Boston. Same kind of a style, a hot studio. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So like, so when someone is guiding, I was going to say teaching, but I just guiding. I like saying it. Yeah.
It is. It's true.
It's been so much fun. I feel like I've learned all this new terminology, and I got to tell you one thing before, like I don't want to lose my train of thought, but what I really enjoyed about Basque, and I don't know if this is, they were extremely welcoming to the notion that I had no background in this whatsoever. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's almost like showing up for something that it is showing up for something you've never done before. But so I enjoy how they guide the classes in the sense that each person has their own way of doing it, but it's soothing. Mm-hmm. It's not the same, but it's like soothing. Like and I guess that's what kind of like gets you into, that's how you gravitate to who you want to kind of follow or be guided by.
Yeah, definitely, because each teacher has their own, like, we talk about like their own vibe, their own kind of style, and there's lots of different ways that you can be trained in yoga. So, based on your training too, you have a lot of different style. But I think that when you find the teachers like you're talking about that are really authentically themselves, that's when the connection starts. And that's when it becomes more than just a physical connection. It like brings you back to that space, like that map, because it's that combination of just feeling good about being there. Because like Mary was talking about before, she's like, whenever I'm like, she says, I show up and I just want to get through the fucking class. Like, I don't even want to do anything else. I just want to make it to the end.
Sure.
And so like when I talk to my students, I'm like we'll be on the mat in child's pose. I'm like, give yourself a fucking hand. You made it here.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of fucking work. There's a lot to do during the day to carve out time for yourself. And I think the point that you bring up, that welcoming environment, that's what I think the connection for me too. So other classes, like I would go to the gym and I would feel so intimidated, like by just not knowing how to use equipment or not using it right or hurting myself or anything like that. But when I arrived in a studio, I always felt like it was okay. Like it was just like go with your flow and do what you want. And I think the teachers that the most are effective are like that. They kind of hold the space for you to move and breathe how you want. And that's kind of like the beauty of it. That's when the magic happens.
So check this out. So, I was in the Air Force. I was in the military for 24 years. And, I was transitioning out. It's going on like a year and a half now that I've been out. But I was transitioning out. And one of my New Year's resolutions was, you know what? You've always wanted to try yoga. Okay, so now, going into the new year. And, I was on like all this anti-depression medication and this kind of thing, and like medication for like PTSD and this kind of thing. So I wanted to see, because I wanted to see if I could wean myself off of all these medications if I tried a more holistic approach to my wellness.
I love that.
So like growing up in the military, I should say, it was all about like, push-ups and sit-ups and running. And then when I got to my first base, I got to Charleston, South Carolina in 2000, I really got introduced into like lifting weights and, the protein and creatines and this kind of thing. But there was never, ever any sort of like Like nothing regarding our joints or stretching our muscles or anything like that. But we were young guys, right? We're young. We're just like, whatever, lift. We don't, not even legs. Like I didn't learn about working out my legs till like in my 30s. But with that being said, right? So I've always wanted to like dedicate, like with me, it works a little different. So some like my wife, right? She can operate kind of like in chaos, where me, I gotta kind of, if I'm gonna go into something, and maybe it's like the cancer in me. I just need, I need things to feel right before I can go into it.
Yeah.
So with the yoga, I felt like, okay, I felt right. I felt like the time was right. And I knew that I had something that I wanted to accomplish. And that was, I really wanted to see if I could get off the medications. And I'm off the medications.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That's funny that you mentioned that. I feel like I had a similar like conversation with myself when I was in Mexico, because when I was able to like, again, there's very few times like that you can just like peel away, right? And really get into something. So when I was in Mexico, the same thing, like just getting into my practice, and I was practicing a lot and journaling and just everything. And same thing, I have had problems with anxiety and depression my entire life. And I was just like, maybe at this point I'm ready to go off this and like, take a chance and really feel again. You know what I mean? And just allow yourself to be, because sometimes that's really scary. But I feel with yoga, what it's taught me is that in all that chaos and all that drama and just things that happen, at the end of the day, you've got your body, you've got your mind, your spirit, and you can come back to it anytime. And they're just there. And you just have to learn to tap into it. So I love that you did that. I'm in the same place. It's scary too, right?
Yeah,
another big thing for me that I rarely talk about, but it's a big part of who I am now is I've struggled with alcoholism. Especially during, I don't know, you look at it now and you're like, okay, so it was my whole life. But, during COVID, it was when it really kind of crept up on me. And so I've done a lot of work in that space. And I was taking some medication for several years now to help with my sobriety. And one of the things I decided was to go off that medication, because it's just, again, medication, it's adding chemicals to my body. And even physically, I had to go and get an injection, like in my rear end. It's painful, the way it made me feel, all those types of things that happen. And so being able to like take that leap of faith and just being like, all right, I'm enough along in my sobriety that I feel like I can like handle it a little bit better on my own. But it's also my practice, like that confidence that I get on the mat, that I've been able to, now that I've been practicing for years, and it's taken this long that I feel like I can take it off. And I tap into the same things that when I'm stressed out or I'm anxious or, feel like I'm tempted or whatever that might be, I go back to the same things I do when I'm on my mat, and I feel chaos and craziness, just back to the breath, back to my body, back to knowing that I can control the situation as long as I like really take the time to evaluate and just sink in. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of close your mind. Yeah. You're like, the drama's there. It's not going away. It's just about managing it.
So I started in March. We're going into the new year. So I started in March of this year, and immediately I start wanting to bring in like my buddies, even family too, right? Like, hey, like you gotta try this, like at least once, and one of my buddies, after we left, he's a cop in New York City. Stressful job, you know what I mean? He's like, dude, that was like going away on a trip.
That's awesome.
He's like, that was like going away on a trip. Like your mind just kind of, even if it was just like for an hour, you know what I mean? But what I didn't realize until so I'm writing a book. So I'm writing a book and I'm working some stuff out. And it's pretty much about, ultimately it's me being young, growing up with a mother addicted to heroin, and like this entire craziness of a childhood, traumatic childhood that, It's wild. The whole process is wild. And I'm down here in the studio writing at like 4 a.m. I write for an hour, and then I'll come back and I'll do edits the following day. So it's therapeutic in the sense that you're coming back to what you wrote, and you're writing about like this crazy childhood upbringing. But in it, I just realized not too long ago that I had anxiety as a child, and I don't even know, it might've been like mild, but I realized now like, oh man, like that's what that was. That's what that feeling was, you know, but it got really bad. It got really, really bad. Like after my deployment to Afghanistan, and then it kind of like went away for a little bit. And then it just, I think it was like in 2022, April of 22, I had like a severe panic attack
That's
where
scary.
I'm just like, oh my God, like, what is this? And it lasted for like the severity of it. Like I was like almost like in a mind fog, and that lasted for like 2 weeks, but I had to go to Alabama for like a training with the Air Force, where I stopped off in Charlotte to visit a friend. The next day I was like, hey man, like something's wrong with me. So they took me to the ER. So I went to the ER, and the doctors are like, hey man, like whatever you're going through, it's mental.
Yeah.
It's not physical. They're like, you could lose a little bit of weight. Your blood pressure is a little high, but we don't think you're going to stroke out or anything. But whatever it is you're feeling is mental.
Yeah.
So
that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but going back to that, I'm like, oh man, like how do you deal with that? And in the military, for the most part, they're going to put you on some kind of a medication.
Yeah. I mean, that's easy to fix.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, life is funny how it works and how things happen for a reason. So when I'm at this point in my life now where like, hey, listen, like the military is now behind you. Now you have like this next chapter of your life. Like, what do you want to do with it? You know what I mean? So, maybe it was the right time to guide me in that kind of way. But I extremely think I really wish I would have known about this in my 20s.
Yeah.
Or even younger than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just didn't.
No, it's definitely, I feel like yoga sometimes for people and I'm stereotyping a little bit, but I definitely think for men, it's a little bit more like uncomfortable. It's definitely, I mean, I see predominantly women in the studio, or people think it's not hard enough, or, whatever it is. And then it has a lot of like, a lot of preconceived notions about what it is or might not. But at the end of the day, it's whatever you want it to be.
Yes.
And that's what's so cool about it. Like you can take a class at 95 degrees, sweating your ass off, or you can just lay on the floor for 45 minutes with a bolster and a block and hang out. And that can be just as therapeutic. It's really just about what you need right now.
Yeah.
And so when I'm teaching, when I'm practicing, like that's just what I try and tap into. Like you've shown up, you made it here. So what do you need right now?
Wow.
Like, do you need to move a lot? Then move a lot. If you need to sit on the ground and stretch, then do that too, and it just allows you to kind of like find that space to do that. So
how did you, okay. So you said you were in Hoboken, you were pregnant. What brought you from Hoboken to Boston?
So I was working, at the time I worked for Santander Bank. So I was an executive in sales for them I started with a branch manager and just kind of moved my way up. I worked for them for a total of like about 15 years or so.
Wow.
And so they're based in Boston. So as I moved up the corporate ladder, I was flying back and forth for work to New York. I'm from New Jersey to Boston, like probably like once a month at least. So I just had an opportunity up there with them, and so I jumped at it and took it and went up to Boston.
Wow. Okay, so that's how you get up to Boston.
Yeah.
So to your point, you were like, you were pregnant. You're like. You said, and you were in your 30s. We moved up there.
My son was like, they were just before they started school. So Nicholas was like 5 and Christian was like 1.
Wow.
Yeah, they were babies.
Wow.
So they have a little Boston accent. So when we come back to New Jersey, my mom was like, what is he saying? I'm like, it's okay. It's just from Boston now, Ma. But
that accent,
it's
right?
a little rough.
You could go many places, but like, there's no other place where you could be like, it kind of sounds no.
When he was at like preschool, I like couldn't understand what his preschool teacher said. I'd be like, all right, whatever. See you later. See you tomorrow. Yeah, because he was so little. But so that's how I ended up in Boston. And I was just working, you know what I mean? Just doing my thing. I didn't even at that point, I never thought I was getting into yoga and things like that. But I had kind of a similar situation too, which kind of really transitioned me into a lifestyle change. So I had a panic attack as well. And again, I had anxiety and depression probably for as long as I can remember. But again, we were up in Boston and I just remember like I had been traveling a ton for work. I was literally exhausted and I was finally home and just kind of like relaxed. And like, ironically, that's when I have the panic attack. I'm like, what the hell, you know? And I literally remember like my heart like pounding in my chest. And I was like, I thought I was having a heart attack. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. There's a heart disease in my family. So immediately your head goes to like, starts making up all these stories, and things like that, where like I had, my husband at the time like called 911 and I was like, same thing. I'm in the hospital in the ER and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. And now I'm like, well, now I just feel like a jackass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, no, there's something wrong. Like, you don't understand. Like, I was going to like fall over. Like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't like see straight. I couldn't, like, I was in a fog. Like, and they were like, nope, it's all mental. And then like, I go home and I got a call from my my primary care, I should say, pediatrician. Yeah, right. My primary care who, I just, again, had a nice relationship, which is always amazing. It's because she's from New Jersey too. And she was like, what happened? I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's too much. Like, you're doing too much. And like, we just had a really good sit down conversation. And at the time I was seeing a therapist just because I just think that's good for everybody. And I just really leaned into it. And there was like, my world was spinning and I just needed to make some choices and really difficult choices. And like during those next couple of years, as I, separated from my husband at the time, like, decided to like, I had to sell my house. I decided like, am I staying in New Jersey or staying in Boston? Am I coming back to New Jersey? It was a lot of scary and big decisions to make. My kids were still, fairly young at the time.
How old are your kids?
I got separated in like 2016. So, they were in like third grade. Yeah. Little babies still. So,
wow.
It was a lot for all of us. And so, I just kept going back to my mat and to yoga. And then the big change for me happened during COVID. So, you mentioned things happen for a reason. I'm a huge, huge believer in that because if you looked at my life now, you'd be like, something must have happened for some reason because I never would have planned any of this. Like, what? So I just, I had gotten my teaching certificate from yoga a couple of years before, and then I was home during COVID. Again, my kids were little, so they were in elementary school at the time. Me and my husband were separated, so I was living in this little apartment, and I had to be there because everything was on Zoom and whatever. And so the studio that I had gotten my training with had asked if I would start teaching like online classes for them. And I was just like, me? Like, why? I don't know, and I'm like, sure, why not? And I started doing that and I literally just fell in love with it, like immediately. And as things started opening up, I was just, again, you go back to that anxiety, the other things I was working through, I just needed to change. And I was like, I'm not going back to corporate America. You
just decided, and so you just decided you were going to like not go back to corporate America?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like did that, okay, was that something that took a while? And if it did, how long did it take?
Well, there's definitely some situations that happened too. So I had been working, I was working at Santander for a while. I was over at MIT and then I was working at the time and it just, again, I was in this really, really bad place in my life and it wasn't going well. And so I was offered basically a severance package or a different job. And I was like, you know what? The shit is hitting the fan and I needed to, and then the same thing, like COVID was happening. It was almost like the signs were telling me to take a break.
The universe was talking to you?
Yeah, like the universe is like, this is not going well.
Yeah. Yes.
And nothing was going well. Like, again, I was like completely lost. Like I felt like very, the word I go back to when I describe this time in my life is broken. Like, I married my high school sweetheart Like he was literally the love of my life from the time I can remember. And we still have a good relationship and that's great, but it takes a while to get there. Like, and we had a rough divorce and it's hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on him. It was hard on the kids. So I knew that this time in my life, I just needed like a little time out. This is also when I feel like that drinking kind of clicked in. We're home, like everything's closing down. I was scared. I was lonely, all of those types of things. And I knew that I needed to make some kind of change because it was going bad really fast. So yoga was, again, this place where I found time and time again that like, not confidence, but just clarity, I guess is maybe the word that I'm looking for, or just a space that I could feel free and feel like safe. I don't know. It's a lot of all of those things at once. So I just kept going back to that spot. And so when I was teaching it and when I saw that saying words to people and getting them, first of all, when you say things to people and they actually do it, you're like, hey, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah. And then like when you get people coming after class, I'm just being like, that was an amazing class. Like, I loved your music. I loved what you had to say. I loved how I feel now. Like, it means something. And it just felt really good. And then I was like, head right into the deep end. I was like, from there, I just decided that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Kim, so that happens. And then while you're going through this feeling, how long after does like the severance package and all of that kind of like happen?
Yeah.
Is it like kind of like at the same time?
Yeah. So that's just one of the things I feel like I was lucky. So I had a little bit of like, you know what I mean? Because again, you're going through like part of this is like just even setting myself up. Like, I'm going through divorce, getting separated. That's a big financial change, all sorts of things like that. And part of the decisions about even opening up a yoga studio and things like that were financial. I could say, oh yeah, I want to be a yogi and travel the world and hang out and do yoga all the time, but that doesn't pay the bills at all. So like my big transition was like, okay, like I had been in business and banking and finance for years, and I was like, how can I tie these two spaces together? So I, when I left and things started kind of opening up, I actually took a job and I think the pay was like, I don't even know if it was like 40 grand. I was like, oh my God, I'm on by 25 again. Like, what is this shit?
Yeah.
I mean, I was making like six figures working at such
that's a
like,
huge,
this is a huge deal. Like, I was like, what the hell am I thinking?
You're like, universe, are you for real right now? Like,
I know. And so like I got a job as a studio manager at like a local yoga studio in Boston. So I got there and I just was like, they'll give it a try. I'll see. And then I had met, and that's what yoga is about. I really feel like for me, it's just about meeting one person who's taken me to the next spot, who's introduced me to another person. And that's what I love about it. So, I met new friends there and then they worked at the time at like Core Power, which is a corporately owned franchise. Like, you know what I mean? They're corporately owned. They're all over the US. And at the time I had to put like my like mom hat on. I'm like, all right, I need benefits. I need a steady paycheck. Like as a yoga teacher, like if I didn't teach, I didn't get paid, it's a very, whatever. So I needed a steady paycheck. I needed benefits for the kids. And so I went to work for Core Power and I was a studio manager and teacher for them for about 2 years. So I worked for them for about a year and a half. It's like a local, well, they have them all over the US, but, and that's kind of like when I was there, I was kind of like, again, always kind of thinking, you know what I mean? Like my entrepreneurial hat came on and I was just like, I can do this. I can do this somehow. And then I kind of like just started researching, like, do I want to open up, just find a spot on the corner and be like, hang a shingle outside and be like, Kim's Yoga, please come. Or, and then I started looking into franchises. And ironically, where I crossed YogaSix path was one of my best friends from home, lived out in California at the time. And I used to go visit her and it was like her yoga spot, right? She's like, oh, let's go do yoga. And it was a YogaSix. And I just loved it. I like hot yoga. That's kind of my jam. And it's a hot studio. So I went there, I loved it. And as I started researching, like I just went back there, started researching them and, looked into a couple different options. We went out to California. Their Exponential Fitness is the parent company that owns YogaSix. They own all boutique fitnesses. So they own YogaSix, they own Cycle Bar, Pure Bar, Club Pilates, Rumble Fitness, Row House. There's a couple of them, but I'm in the YogaSix space. So went out there, met with them, and just really liked what they had to offer. To be honest, I think it was probably the best decision because, you open up your business, like, I don't really know what I was doing. Like, I was going to open up the doors and be like, hey. So they give me like all of the backbones of my business. So marketing, brand recognition, a lot of training and development for my teachers. So one of the things that was really important to me is I'm a yoga teacher first. And so when I was thinking about how I wanted my space, and that's how I like to kind of like our space, the YogaSix space, where our studio, I wanted to be like all the things that I loved about all the spaces I worked at, and all the things that I didn't like were things that I didn't want. So like I wanted somebody there at the front desk. Like there are some studios that usually has a teacher there and they'll check in, but they're not going to have the same conversation. Like I want somebody there, like answering your questions. Like if you have a question about your credit card, your membership, they should be able to answer. You don't want to have somebody like email you back. There's just lots of things. Yeah. But I also wanted my teachers, again, to feel really well supported. It's a journey. And I think the best teachers are ones that are constantly learning and taking classes and learning from other teachers and experiencing things. And YogaSix gives me this opportunity and this platform for them to talk to teachers in Tennessee, talk to teachers in Florida. You know what I mean? They can do all these trainings, things like that. So
I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's like things that I, as a small business owner, I can't offer any of that to them.
I never thought of that part.
It's just like
of the network.
Yeah, the network of it.
That's really good.
And in Boston, there's no other YogaSix. Like there's one other. We're right in Somerville, Massachusetts. There's another location out in Wellesley, which is about 45 minutes west of us. So we don't have a lot of the brand recognition. Like if you go out in California, I think they're like like a Starbucks. Like every other corner, they're kind of a staple out there. But it was still like the building and the franchise and the kind of like the outline of the program was really exactly what I needed. They've taught me a lot of different things. And it's still small enough that I can literally call the CEO and just be like, hey, like I need to talk about this, and things like that. So, it's been great. I really, really love the support. And me and Pej, my husband, are on target to open up 2 more. So Assembly Row in Somerville is our first location. And we've just been really happy with the support that we've gotten from Exponential and YogaSix specifically, that we've decided to open up 2 more.
Wow.
And I really just feel like, it's for us, it's just about expanding our footprint. It makes good business sense. And also the support is huge. Like, I just feel like we have a lot more support and from them to be able to expand a little bit easier than I probably would be if I was just like, just me and my, sole prop kind of situation. So it's been really nice. Yeah.
Man, like, do you ever like, so like, I find myself like I reflect a lot more now than when I was in the military. I don't know why that is. I don't know. I just don't know if it's like the way I look at time now or in any case, but do you ever like think back to yourself when you're to the tough time when you had to like move and like go from Hoboken and to Boston and whatever it was exactly that you were going through, the separation and like, do you ever like think back on that and like feel like you're like living a different life now? Oh,
I'm absolutely living 100% different life now. And I think it took getting through a lot of the shit to get to the other side, and everybody's got stuff. Like everybody's got stuff, like especially these days. There's a lot of heavy things out there. And again, I look back and I reflect a lot. And sometimes I'm just like, how did this happen? This like journey was this windy road. But I also don't think that I'm done yet either. And that's really exciting for me. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm looking forward to the future. You know what I mean? So I am in a different place. I'm in a different place than I was a couple of years ago. Even before that, and when I lived in New Jersey, I was a different person. I have kids now, I'm a mom, it's all like you take it with stride. And when you take the opportunities and grow from them, then that's good. And, sometimes it doesn't always happen. So, but the yoga's really taught me to like dig in and to take time to reflect, because that's part of it. You can go and get into the grind of things every single day. And that's the easy thing. Like I say, if we're practicing, like when you slow down or you get into like pigeon or something that's like really uncomfortable. Like you're like this, like I don't normally sit like this or, but you sit down and you just come back to your breath, and it's hard and it's easy when you're moving and you're fast and you're going, and it's just easy to be mechanical. But when you dig in and get into like postures or dig into journaling or dig into a meditation or anything like that, that's when the real work starts, and that's when the good stuff happens. And that's like what Tulum was for me. Like getting away, going into this spot where I could once again be vulnerable again.
How did you land on the spot that you went to? Because I saw it on Instagram. I was like, oh man, Kim, I want to talk to you about this experience you had there. So how'd you land on that exact resort? So is it the right way to call it a resort?
Yeah. So it's like a yoga kind of resort. So it specializes in yoga classes. So again, it's a funny story because it's all the paths that cross you. So I through YogaSix, I became friendly. So one of the things again that they offer is training for the teachers. So when we first opened up the studio, we had what is called a master trainer. So when you go to a yoga studio, so we called YogaSix because there's 6 signature classes. There's a hot, a power, sculpt, restore, slow flow, and a 101. And all the teachers are taught to teach those types of classes. So what we do is they bring in someone to help teach my classes. So this young lady, Montana, Mitchell came in. She's from Pittsburgh, and she's a teacher out there for South Hills YogaSix, and she's one of the master trainers for YogaSix. So she came out and taught my team and me because I teach at the studio, and I just love her. Like I feel like she's like the 25 version of me. Like I'm old now, right? So I look at her, I'm like, okay, she's cool, and she does a lot of things that I can't because she's half my age. But I just love her. She just has. I always say to her, like, she has little sprinkles. Like she just has this magic about her. Like she's one of those people that you come into the room with her and you're like, oh my God, I love this girl. I don't even know her. So we connected really well, and she was planning this retreat. And ironically, if we back up a little bit, I had done a yoga retreat in 2023 before I opened the studio down in Costa Rica. And it was the first time I'd ever done one, and I'd always wanted to do one. And I kind of like, put it together. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. And I was looking to do another one. And this specific resort where Montana was having this retreat was called the Sala Resort in Tulum. And it was one of the places I was looking for. And so I was on Instagram, as we all are from time to time, and I was looking at Montana's page, and she had posted something that I think somebody had backed out of one of the rooms or something like that. And she was like, hey, I've got a bed opened up in a single room, like come do yoga. And like, that's the one thing about yoga. Like you can literally pick up, and wherever you land with a yoga mat, you have like instant friends.
Yep.
Instant friends. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to Tulum.
Yeah.
And so I call her and I'm like, hey, you got a spot for me? She's like, of course I do. And then I was talking to Pej, my husband, and I'm like, I want to go to Tulum. He's like, well, I want to go to Tulum too. So I called her up and like, can you get in a room? And so the two of us went, and it was partly, I kind of like went down there to kind of like check out the resort. Like originally I was like, oh, we'll check it out. We'll see if we like it. Maybe we'll do a retreat for, YogaSix or with our studio. And it wasn't any of that. As soon as you get off there and I got into my practice, it was just about being in Tulum and being in yoga and meeting all these people. Like Pej and I were the only people from Boston. Everybody else was from Pittsburgh. Wow. So we were there with like 32 strangers in Montana. But again, getting onto your mat, like, it just like you just kind of like sink in. And I know that we were talking about the Temescal that I did while I was there. Yeah. So like that's also really fun. So when you go away, one of the things that I love to do, and I think most people would enjoy, like really getting into the culture, right? So I'm in Mexico, so I've got to do like, things that are really traditional. So the Temescal is a sweat hut. So it's a traditional, like kind of Mexican tradition that the family kind of comes together and they celebrate, or when they're praying together or coming together, like for the holidays, whatever it is, they heat up this hut. So what you do is it's usually on Saturdays or Sunday nights, because again, it's kind of like a special occasion, and they have. I forget the name and I don't want to butcher it, but they have somebody who's like the fireman, and they heat these like lava, almost like volcanic rocks all day long. So they're like hundreds and hundreds of degrees, and they're just out in like this wood burning stove, like in the middle of the jungle.
For real?
Yeah,
in the middle of the jungle. So hold on. So this is not part of the resort. This is something totally
like
different?
this is just like we like did this as like an excursion, like kind of off. Yeah.
Did everybody do it?
Not everybody.
Okay.
Not everybody. So I think there was probably about maybe like 12, 15 of us that went.
Wow.
So you go and like and that's the other thing with Tulum. Like it's in the middle of the jungle. Like you have all these resorts and then you cross the street and it's like a jungle. And so we're walking down this little path and we see this like, this little hut and this fire burning. And so the person comes out and, you take time to, thank your ancestors. You face the north and give a blessing, the south, east, and west. And then you start to go into this hut one at a time. So you go in and you go clockwise around the outside of the hut and inside the middle, it's completely enclosed. And inside the middle of it is a fire pit and it's empty when you first walk in. So you come in and you have, usually it's like, they usually say the abuela, the mother, the grandmother of the family, whoever's leading the prayer comes in and they bring in the heat rocks one at a time. So you come in at 6 at a time. So the fire man brings in 1 rock at a time and then they throw water on it. And so it starts to steam up the room, the little hut. And
oh my God.
Then 6 rocks in and they're like, and they throw this water and then they take a blanket and close off. So you're literally in pitch black. Like you can't even see your hands in front of your face. And you're sitting there and it's hot as shit.
What?
And you just have to come back to your breath. And you just have to come back to knowing that you're in a safe space and that you're sitting in there. And the person who's leading you is usually leading a prayer or a chant or a mantra of, whatever it is that they're kind of talking about. And you go back to kind of like blessing your ancestors and getting into your breath. And you have to start to control your breath because the heat and the humidity in the room is so strong. So after a certain period of time, you call for the puerta, the door to open, the gate to open, and they pull the blanket aside and some of the heat comes out. But then the fire guy comes back with 6 more rocks.
Whoa.
So then you go into the second gate, which is 6 more rocks. And so now there's 12 rocks on in the Temescal. And so the heat's hotter, the steam is more. And they take full buckets. I mean, the buckets are like, and you're dumping this entire water. There's water flying everywhere. They give you little herbs. So some of the herbs were, it was chamomile, basil, rosemary, and another one, I can't remember, it was a local to Mexico. And you can like kind of like fan yourself. It doesn't really do anything, but I feel like when you're like, woo.
How long is this taking?
It takes 2 hours. You're there for 2 hours.
Outta here.
Yeah. So you're in there and like you don't have any concept of time or of what's going on because it's completely enclosed. You're in complete darkness. And it just keeps getting hotter. So again, after the second door, they open the door, some of the cool air comes in, kind of gives you a moment of reprise. And then he comes back in with 6 more rocks. And so now you're up to 18 stones on the fire. And they're just like, you put one, and I guess closes the gate and you're back in.
So what is it like? How do you, it's one thing to find your breath and get aligned, right? Get everything aligned. But 2 hours is still a long time.
It's a very long time.
That's a long time to kind of like, do you start to like hallucinate or like?
You get a little crazy. I mean, I feel like by the time I was done, I was like laying on the bottom of the floor because I'm like, it's colder down there. But the other thing too, like for me, you're also sitting next to people, right? So you're in this like space. And I remember at one point I was breathing really heavy. Like I felt like I couldn't catch my breath and I was like struggling. Like I was breathing. And all of a sudden I just felt someone's arm, like the woman next to me. And she just put her hand on my shoulder. And then you're right back in that community. Like she's like, I got you. Like she doesn't even have to say anything. Wow. It's like the touch was just enough.
Yeah.
Because
she can't see you. No. She can just hear you.
Yeah. And like everybody else's experiences were similar. Like, you know what I mean? Like I touched this, I could feel you breathing. I could, and you kind of just come together. Wow. And it's an experience.
It's almost like Avatar.
Yeah, like it's an experience. Connected. And like you don't realize how long you're in there. If they would have told me I was going to be in like 200-degree steam for 2 hours, I'd have been like, Sorry, no, thank you. I'm tapped out. No way. But, it's about just going in and trusting the process, trusting that you're going to be okay. Wow.
If you ever go back, we would want to go.
Yeah, of course.
That's I would want to do that.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean,
I don't know that I could do 12. I would try. I promise you I would try. I would definitely try. Yeah. What is it like when you're in there in the dark and you're hearing the chants and the prayers and stuff?
So it's kind of the other thing too, is we also got, in addition to the herbs, we had little drums. So drums in maracas, so you could almost find your own rhythm. You're taking something and just kind of tapping, so again, you're kind of coming into this rhythm of breath too. So you also hear all these sounds around you. So you can hear the drums of the other people in the room with you, the steam of the water. It's just an all encompassing experience.
Man,
it's really hard to describe unless you're in there.
But it sounds so cool.
Yeah,
though.
It's cleansing. I mean, you come out there. I mean, the day of, you can't drink. You got to hydrate all day long. No caffeine. You've got to prepare. I mean, if you go in there, after hanging out on the beach at Tulum all day, you're gonna puke and have a miserable experience. Yeah. But
what time of day is it?
It's at night, so it's always at night. Usually on Saturdays or Sunday nights. Yeah. Wow. So it's at the end of once the sun goes down, the moon is at the coming up is when you want to do it. Wow. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Do you feel
But I
different?
couldn't even sit in a sauna. How they have saunas and things like that? Can't do it.
Can't sit in the sauna.
No,
but you can do hot yoga though.
Yeah, but hot yoga I can do. It's all about tapping into, Yeah.
What was it like afterwards? After you came out of there? What
I was really hungry.
Yeah, what'd you eat? What'd you eat?
So that was the thing is to do. We didn't eat till 9 o'clock that night because it was late and we were there. But it's a very cleansing kind of process. You're tired, you're wiped out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You're completely dehydrated.
Sure.
So all you want is water, food, hydration, and bed. But again, that just even that cleansing process. How often do you really get to sweat out the toxins of your body? Where you really sweat them out, for 2 hours,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the process of it too. So, yeah.
What's it like the next day?
I don't remember. I just remember feeling really good the whole week. I know that we did it pretty early on in the retreat. We got there on a Friday and it was Saturday night that we had done it. So yeah,
wow.
It was a start. It kind of set the tone for the whole time there too.
So what about what's a day like over there? When you're at this kind of retreat. Mm-hmm. So what time does the day start? 8 o'clock?
So so on this specific retreat we did, again, and one of the other things too was completely optional. So we had morning walks on the beach, had breakfast together, and then we did about 2 hours of yoga. So from about 9:30 to 11:30, we just practiced together. And then had lunch, and then the afternoons we kind of did whatever we wanted. And then we did these excursions, the Temescal. Some of the people on the retreat did cold plunges. That was an offering there. Yeah,
Where?
Right on the beach, they had these big things filled up with ice, and
really?
you can go right in them.
Oh,
See, that I can't do. I don't know. I like the heat. I don't like the cold.
Wow. So hold on. So when you're practicing for 2 hours in the morning, is it hot?
Yes. Well, we're also outside. So all the shalas, so where you practice in what's called a shala, which is usually just an open space. I mean, for yoga, all you need is your mat and the floor.
Sure.
But most of them, when you're at a retreat, it will be outside. So, it's a very sweaty, sandy experience as well.
Okay. So it's basically whatever the temperature is outside. Yeah. It's not it's a controlled room that's hot.
No, it's not a controlled room. Okay. No, not in these ones.
Now is it almost is it shaded?
Yeah.
It's shaded?
Yeah.
And the sides are open almost?
Yeah, and the sides would be open so you could see out. I remember when we went to Costa Rica, that was one of the funnest things. I remember just literally the jungle is just off to the side. Wow. That's part of the going and being part of the culture, and the experience of it is really what makes them super fun too.
Do you know who Tom Green is? Remember Tom Green?
I feel was he a comedian way back in the day? Yeah.
On MTV and stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
So he's he's one of the originators of podcasts, and there's film and stuff like that on Instagram of Joe Rogan sitting with him. And Joe Rogan looks a lot younger and that kind of thing, and they're hanging out. But the reason why, so I was listening to Tom Green on Joe Rogan a while back, and I don't know that he was at a retreat, but he was in Costa Rica.
Nice.
At a bonfire on the beach, like huge bonfire.
Yeah.
Right? So apparently like he went back to his room, I guess like went to sleep, took a nap or something, gets up at like 2, 3 in the morning, decides that he's going to go back out to the beach, to the bonfire.
Yeah.
When he goes back out there, it's not as large of a fire as he remembers. So he just starts walking out. And when he starts walking out, all they did was they covered the coals with sand.
Yeah.
So he steps into...
Oh my goodness. The fire.
Into the, like, severely like injures himself. You know what I mean? Like the shock and everything before kind of like he could feel exactly what was going on. Had to be like medevac and everything.
God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Kind of crazy. I don't know if you want this in the podcast. We could probably like edit this part out or whatever. But like, I think of Costa Rica and I think about things like that.
Yeah,
like,
no,
like,
it's
man,
a little
like
scary.
That's, you know.
So like one of the things that I was freaked out about in Costa Rica. So one of the reasons like you go to kind of like these remote locations, not that Tulum is obviously a remote location, but it can be, you know, there's areas of it that can be. So we were in a space that was a little bit more off the beaten path, but you know, Costa Rica has blue zones. So there's these places in the world that are called blue zones that have just special energy that a lot of like people who are meditating or feel like they can like kind of tap into that energy. And so Costa Rica is one of those places that have it. But so that's kind of what drew me there. But when I got there, I was terrified walking anywhere because I'm like, am I getting eaten by an alligator?
They have alligators out there?
Yeah, they had alligators. I mean, it's like you're still out in the middle of, you know what I mean, Costa Rica. Like you're in the jungle. Like, you know, it's kind of like you got to be careful too.
Really?
You know, like one of the cool and not cool, like you're walking down the paths and there's like little monkeys kind of like doing their thing above you and hanging out. Yeah. But it's fun.
An alligator.
I'm not a big fan of alligators.
Alligator get a hold of you.
Yeah, no, that's not my. Like some of the girls that were, I remember in Costa Rica, they went like kayaking, and like they're literally in these like mangroves with alligators. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good, right here, good on the beach.
I'll just be over here stretching.
Yeah, like instead of like deer crossings like we have here in New Jersey, it's like alligator crossings.
Have you been back to Costa Rica? That was just
that was the first time I'd been there. That was the first and only time I went to Costa Rica. I would love to go back. So one of the things that I'm working on definitely is another retreat. So Tulum was beautiful and amazing, and I loved it. But I had just decided it wasn't a place that I wanted to do another retreat. I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so actually, this is pretty exciting. I'm actually just signed, or I'm working on it right now. We're going to be doing a retreat to Iceland. So when I was in Tulum, I met this young lady, Catherine, and she's the one who kind of ran the retreat that Montana was running. And that's what she does for a living. So she's a yoga teacher from Pittsburgh. And she's just kind of like, she's been a teacher for a long time. But one of the things that she wanted to do with her practice was travel and yoga. So she kind of came up with this company called The Retreat. And like, I know that she's going to the Swiss Alps in like August of next year. And she was just great. And we just kind of like, you know, so it was like, you know, I was picking her brain about things, and she was able to hook me up with this woman up in Iceland that she had done a retreat with. And so, yeah, we're planning it right now. It's going to be really cool.
So do you have a date or a month?
Yeah, so we're going to do it May of 2026. So it's going to be over Memorial Day weekend, like that week. So May 23rd through the 30th. So it'll be 7 days.
So, okay, so folks get things confused, right? So they think Iceland, they think it's ice and cold, but it's really like nice and plush.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's supposed to be one of the most beautiful places in the world. And for me up in Boston, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like it's literally just, it's pretty close for us to get up there. And it's been really popular lately too.
Yeah.
And it's just that contrast. So like you definitely, you know, you can go see a glacier one day and then hop in like a like volcanic like hot stream and like soak there for hours in like 85-degree water.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's going to be really cool. But it's getting back to the elements, getting back to, that's another part of the retreats. It's about getting away, experiencing the culture, the food. You know, most of these retreats are either like very organic food or vegan food, things like that. Like you're drinking water, like, you know what I mean? Like things like that. Like, so it's all part of the experience.
What about, so with the food, right? So is that kind of like all inclusive, or is it just like when you put something like that together?
Yeah.
Is that something to consider?
Yeah, no. So we definitely like whatever the retreats we do or when I went on them, it's all inclusive. So you kind of go there and you've got the whole day planned, you know, so the food is inclusive, the yoga, you know, things like that too.
Wow.
And then you can always add on extra stuff too.
We've been Mayor and I, my wife and I, we've been talking about possibly getting in, you know, like, we're like, how many times we've done quite a bit of traveling. It's like, we're going to go back to the same place or not, but she's really interested in kind of like, I showed her
you guys got to come with us.
It'd be great.
I would love for you guys to come. It'd be so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be so fun.
And we're all about that, you know, like something new, something different. And the fact that it's surrounded around like wellness, like I'm all about that.
Yeah.
You know
and
I mean?
think that like, I don't know. And I guess, I haven't been on other wellness retreats, so I can't really speak to them, but what I love about them is that sense of community. Like it's kind of baked into yoga. Like that's the whole point is like going there and not knowing it. I feel like I came home with 30 new friends. You know what I mean? Like we're still like on the WhatsApp trend and they're like, oh, we're going to this in Pittsburgh. I'm like, damn it. I'm missing it. But it's fun. And even that, like I have Montana and Catherine coming into Boston to do a special class at my studio. You know, they're coming in to come to a concert in the city. And so like we're incorporating like a nice special class with them in, and it's nice to have people from different areas and different experiences come and just like share their love of yoga too. So I'm looking forward to that too.
It'd be cool if in some kind of way, like in the future, as you continue to grow this, if you could like do something with like the veteran community.
I would love that.
In your area. Because so many people can benefit from.
Absolutely.
You know, just, you don't have to get, you know, I was always under the impression that if you couldn't do this or you couldn't move like this, like is out of your reach. But clearly you start where you start, you know? So there's like veterans out there, man, like simply being able to like find rhythmic breathing can do wonders for you. Yeah. You know, just that. And then of course you add everything else. You have the stretching and the mindfulness, and I could talk about it all day.
I'm glad, me too.
Yeah, I could talk about it all day.
No, I love it. Just getting back to the community, with YogaSix in the studio, we're new and we're definitely trying to branch out. But some of the things that we do is like we do offer a yoga in the park class every Saturday mornings in the summer. And it's just so nice. Like there's like 200 people that show up and we're just outside and moving and breathing in the sunshine, just enjoying being outdoors and just with each other. For this upcoming year, I'm working with the Somerville Teen Recreation Center because I also think that's a really important demographic. Like kids have so much going on. If they can find space where, again, the same thing that I had, just coming to your mat where you feel good and comfortable, like, you know what I mean? So we're working with them. We're going to be doing some teen classes for them just to kind of get them on the mat and things like that. So that'll be fun too. Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love everything. Like you could tell, Kim, like, like that you're in a good space. Like there's like, I know there's lighting in this room. There's like a light coming off of you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. You feel it? Do you feel like?
You know what? I when I talk about yoga and I talk about the studio, I do feel a little radiant because it just feels good. And that's what it's doing. And when it comes back to like owning your own business and doing things, it's a grind. Like, so don't get me wrong. Like I'm still there scrubbing the toilets and worrying about the heat and, doing all those kinds of things. But the fact that I can go to my yoga studio and feel like I'm changing somebody's life, even if it's just for 60 minutes, it feels really good. It feels really, really good. That's what I love being about a teacher. Like at the end of the day, I feel like I'm a teacher first. And maybe I hope that's what differentiates like my studio against like others in the area. Because there's tons of different places where you can, practice yoga or work out or, do anything. So like what I truly like to do is be authentic and be who I am on the mat, off the mat, it's whatever it is. So, and sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good, but it's who you are. And the fact that you can create a space for people to allow themselves to show up any way they are is really fun and really cool.
Man, Kim, I don't have anything else to say after that. That was amazing. Like I cannot wait for you to see this and look back on this because there's a like you said, there's a radiant coming off of you.
Thank you.
There's an energy, and I'm just super happy for you.
Thank you.
So listen, we have people waiting on us. So let's get some food and hang out a little bit more.
Get some food, hang out, and catch up some more.
Thank you, Kim.
Awesome. Always good to see you. Thank you.
You too, honey.
Bye.
Stay sparked. Mach, Spark.N.Stride. Don't forget about it. Kim Fallon in the Heezy. You saw her here. I knew her when.
Oh, please.
Later.